about as good as it gets, the really real. So today, we're going to begin our series on that aspect of our spiritual life that we call prayer. So as we start out, my initial thought was that it is a loaded word. Did anybody have like a reaction when we said, oh, they're talking about prayer? It's a loaded word. I always get this image of that girl, clasping hands on her knees. That it's an iconic photo, but it's one that I associate with immediately when I think of prayer. If you're like me, you've been praying in one form or another for your whole life. I think I started praying bedside prayers when I was about 2. You remember those? Now I lay me down to sleep, or some variation of that? Okay, so we start there, and then we may have moved on to prayers in worship. We may have recited prayers out of prayer books in unison during worship services, or we may have prayed in Sunday schools, or whatever your faith tradition was in your synagogue. You may have stopped praying for a period of time. You may have radically changed your notion of what prayer was or what it meant to you. One of the things I did when I got ready for this talk is Chris Kell sent me a definition of prayer from the Urban Dictionary. And what prayer is what high school students use immediately before a test. Please, please, please get me past this test. So we all have our own versions of prayer. We may have tried chanting, prayer beads or malas, walking, drumming, whatever, as we've gotten more sophisticated, as we've tried to find new ways to connect with Source. Our ways of reaching out and trying to connect with the divine have grown and changed over the years just as we have. I'm willing to bet. So as we continue this month, my hope is that our discussions are going to bring a new dimension to your prayer practice, that you're going to get some ideas, you're going to get some resources, you're going to get new things to try to help you connect with Spirit. Because at the end of the day, prayer means connecting with Spirit. That's what it's about. It doesn't change God, it changes you. That's what it is about. We have some good speakers coming up to talk about it. Next week we're going to have Reverend Steve Samoji from the Shinyo-en Buddhist Temple here. That's going to be way fun. He came back to the old building. Do y'all remember Reverend Steve Samoji? He did a great job, and I'm really looking forward to him coming back. On the 27th, we're going to have Bassem Fakuri and Hunada Sino from the Roswell Community Masjid. And then we have Mitch Cohen coming on September 17th to talk about prayer and just to give us some sharing from the Jewish faith perspective. I'm looking forward to these speakers because as an interfaith community, it just broadens our toolbox of what we can use to help us connect with Source. So Albert Einstein once said that the most important question we can ask is if the universe is a friendly place. The most important question is the universe a friendly place? If we believe it isn't, but is a dark and dangerous place, we're going to use our resources and our energy to build walls, to protect us, to insulate ourselves, to keep the world out. We're going to live in fear because it's a dark and dangerous place. If, on the other hand, we view our universe as loving and welcoming, we're going to use our skills to reach out into it. We're going to find out more about it. We're going to want to connect with it, how we build it, how we sustain it, how we benefit it, and how it can benefit us. We're going to use our resources to learn more about it, to connect and build. So it seemed to me that Einstein was inviting us to look at this question not just from a global perspective, but also from a personal one. As you reflect on your prayer practice, think about it, just think about it this week, and let's discuss it in our Wednesday group. You notice the plug for our Wednesday group. Slick, huh? We're starting back up on Wednesday at Gay Crawford's house. So let's explore the extent to which our belief in the fundamental nature of our universe affects how we, or even if we, reach out to connect with God, with that creative energy at the ground of all being. As we pray, think about it. What our prayers mean. Are they asking for mercy, trying to avoid judgment? Are they in gratitude for a loving and abundant universe? It's just a great thing to think about as we approach our prayer practice. For me, I have always had the view that the universe is a sustaining, a welcoming, and a wonderful place. No matter what's going on in my life, I just continue to be in awe of the beauty of creation that surrounds us. Now, this is true even though I've had difficulties and tragedies, many of which I've talked about from up here. And I've also shared or just witnessed the tragedies of others. And I know that life can be painful, unfair, and short. We just know that because we see it. Even with that, I have always believed and just felt deeply that the universe welcomes our goodness, compassion, kindness, and generosity, and just rewards it tenfold when those attributes come out of us. The fact that life can be so dark for me shows that we as humans still have far to go and much to learn, because we impact how our world is. That's why we're here. So one of the ways we continue on this journey toward a kinder and more compassionate world is through our prayer practices, is through the ways we seek to remain connected with Source, the energy that I believe is the universal good that expresses as us, as all of us in this room, and all beyond, and as all creation. So my father used to have in his office a small plaque on which was written what's known as the Breton fisherman's prayer. You've all read it or seen it in some iteration. It reads, "O God, thy sea is so great, and my boat is so small." Has everyone heard that? "O God, thy sea is so great, and my boat is so small." So you know me, I did a little side trivia, and I just have to tell you what I learned about this plaque. I learned that the father of the nuclear navy, Admiral Hyman Rickover, gave this plaque, this saying, to each of his new submarine commanders when a new boat was commissioned. I think he thought it gave some humility and perspective to these new commanding officers, reminding them that even with this hugely complex, powerful, technological, war-fighting machine, they were not really in charge. It was a good lesson in humility for them. In the spring of 1963, after the Cuban Missile Crisis, he gave the same plaque to President John F. Kennedy, who kept it on the Resolute desk. In his thank you note to Admiral Rickover, President Kennedy wrote, "This beautiful prayer says so much in so few words." It's a beautiful prayer. I just love it. And now it's hanging on Riley's wall. And she gets to celebrate with it. So why do I love this prayer? In a beautiful and moving language, it reminds me that we are surrounded by this vastness and this power of which we are a part, but not the whole part. It leads me to feel grateful for the beauty and the majesty of all creation. It inspires humility, which, as theologian Martin Buber said, is knowing you are but a wave in an infinite ocean. Humility leads to awe, and awe leads to wonder at just the majesty and the beauty that surrounds us. Sometimes it's just overwhelming, even in the midst of life that can be difficult. As is that wave, we are connected to and we are of that infinite power that I believe is a loving and an abundant universe. It is prayer that maintains that connection for us. It is prayer that maintains that knowing for us. It is the way we remind ourselves in a world that can be pretty scary that we are not alone. So how do we pray? We all have our own ways of reaching out to keep that connection strong. We do it here in community. You just saw it. We know this is an enormously powerful way that we can join our energies together, support each other, and send out and make a difference in the mass consciousness, adding to the love and the compassion that makes our world a better place as we join our energies together in love, in healing, and in forgiveness. We have our own individual practices as well, and they may include the powerful aspect of silence. Many say that the deepest, most profound prayers don't use any words at all. Rather, they consist of what the Hebrew Scriptures call a sigh too deep for words. A sigh too deep for words. Catholic theologian and mystic Thomas Merton said that talking is not the principal thing. Now, he was a bit of a hermit, but he was onto something here. He said that talking is not the principal thing. Talking can even get in the way. He wrote, "It's a risky thing to pray, and the danger is that our prayers get between God and us. The great thing in prayer is not to pray, but to go directly to God. If saying your prayers is an obstacle to God, cut it out." This is from a Catholic priest. If saying your prayers gets in the way, stop. He says the best way to pray is stop. Let prayer pray within you, whether you know it or not. So for Merton, what was the purpose of prayer? The purpose of prayer for him was not to achieve some supernatural intervention in our lives, to let the Falcons win, to cure this person, or to make this person happy. The purpose of prayer was to become aware of the connection that we have already with Spirit. It's a remembering, it's a coming home. He said, in prayer we discover what we already have. You start where you are and you deepen what you already have. And you realize you are already there. We already have everything, but we don't know it and we don't experience it. Prayer brings us back, slows us down for the experiencing. So do we always feel that connection? No, we don't. There are times when we reach out and what do we get? Nothing. That's when we pick up the phone, hello, hello, click, click, no. We get no answer back. I remember reading Mother Teresa's book, and many of us have read it, when we were surprised to learn that for the last 40 years of her life, she was in complete despair because she heard nothing from God. She got silence and darkness and distance. Now, she kept going, and she made a huge difference to this world, but she was reaching for that connection, and she was getting nothing. We have all felt that way at times. For me, times like that are when I'm trying to push the connection. It's when I'm treating God like my Google homepage. You know, like click, where it is, you know, there, no, it doesn't come up. You can't just click it and expect it to come up. I want Spirit to respond when I want Spirit to respond. By gosh, and that just doesn't work. I think I know how Spirit's going to show up and sound, just like I know how my computer's going to look when I turn it on. But that doesn't work. So what happens? My assumptions about how or when God will show up to me, how or what God will sound like to me, can blind me to the actual experience. My assumptions get in the way. As Teresa of Avila wrote, our biggest obstacle to finding God is our assumption about what we're looking for. Our assumptions get in the way. She also said, the biggest obstacle to finding God was your last experience of finding God. Because, oh, that's what it's going to look like. And no, it doesn't. But how often do you go out and you think you're looking for one particular thing, and then all of a sudden a miracle occurs right in front of you? Whether it's in nature, in a group, in silence, in reading, in something. God just presents to you and you were totally not ready for it, but wham, there it was. You have to stay focused and you have to stay open and willing. We make the connection with Spirit when we stop listening for something and we just listen. We don't listen for something. Oh, I'm waiting for that. We just listen. Some of you may be familiar with the practice of centering prayer, meditative centering prayer developed by Father Thomas Keating back in the 70s. It's a practice in which we pray not for a desired result, not to say thank you for something good that has happened. Our prayer is nothing more than a return to our readiness to hear God. In a way, we shut down our monkey mind. Cynthia Bourgeot pulls it this way. She says, we put a stick in the spoke of that monkey mind. Isn't that a great image? It's like our mind is going, rrr, 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 like blam, and it stops. And we remain open and just willing and ready to listen, to hear and receive. As Father Keating wrote, we may think of prayer as thoughts or feelings expressed in words, but that's only one expression. Contemplative prayer is the opening of mind and heart, our whole being, to God, the ultimate mystery beyond thoughts, words, and emotions. That is how we center it. That is how we come home to remembering what the source of our energy and the source of our being is. We stop talking because words can get in the way. Remember 3rd grade? What did your teacher tell you? When you are talking, you are not listening. Remember? You can't do both at the same time. You have to stop and just listen. So Dr. Cynthia Bourgeot also gives an image that I love. She teaches that the practice of centering prayer entrains your mind and your heart. So that entrains, like two train cars are joined together, they join them. Remember how Sydney always talks about, let's bring our minds down into our heart space? It's the same thing. It's joining your mind and your heart so that they beat together, so that they reach out together, so that they can hear together. And we do that when we just shut down that mind, let the thoughts go, and just remain open to the presence of Spirit. When our thoughts divert us, she defines a thought as anything that grabs our focus. It can be a thought, it can be a bug on your nose, it can be your dog barking, that's a thought. Anything that grabs our focus, we let it go. and we just return to that willingness to listen. We find our connection to God when we pray in the listening, right where we are and right as we are. God is waiting to connect with us right now. She doesn't wait until we've improved, grown up, lost weight, made money, or saved the world. Right now, our yes is always enough, just as we are. So we've talked a little bit about Anne Lamott, one of my favorite authors. So her book, she wrote about prayer. She says there are only 3 necessary prayers. They're called help, thanks, and wow. I love it. Isn't that true? Doesn't that like cover the terrain? Help, thanks, and wow. She is funny, articulate, insightful, and I really, really recommend that you read her book. She's great. Our reading today was from that book. So Anne Lamott writes that in her life, sometimes all she can do is just reach out and say help. Haven't we all had days like that, or weeks like that, where all you say is help? We don't have it in us to recite fancy liturgical prayers. She calls those the good china of prayers. Sometimes all we can do is say, my day really stinks and I need you to do something about it right now. Get here right now. She knows that we heal through honesty, and God is not waiting on fancy language. All that's asked is our honest input. She wrote the following prayer, which works for most occasions. I don't know about you, but I see myself in it. This is one of her prayers. Hi, God. I am just a mess. It is all hopeless. What else is new? I would be sick of me if I were you, but miraculously you are not. I know I have no control over other people's lives, and I hate this. Yet I believe that if I accept this and surrender, you will meet me wherever I am. Wow, can this be true? How about this afternoon, say 2-ish? Thank you in advance for your company and blessings. You have never once let me down. Amen. Isn't that great? Isn't that great? How about 2 o'clock? Sometimes this is the best we can do. The secret is to keep doing it, and as she found, we will not be let down. The words don't matter. The names don't matter. She wrote that she had a friend who called God Howard, as is, our Father who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. She did it. God is open enough to being called just about anything as long as we keep calling. It's when we let the practice slip because we don't have time, or we're too caught up in the drama or the events of our own lives, or for whatever reason that our lives slip out of control. If you're like me, I always find that to be true. When my practice stops, when I just get way too busy, that's when things start going sideways. We become overwhelmed, we become fatigued, we confuse the important with the merely urgent. I think I'm not the only one who's done that. We move off our center and we lose our balance. The 16th century reformer Martin Luther was known to keep a practice of praying for an hour a day. Someone asked him what happened when he got too busy to pray for that full hour. He responded he prayed for 2, because he knew that the extra pressure on him required that additional focus to keep his center, to keep him on balance and connected with Source. So the first choice we make when we approach prayer is the desire to do it, the longing to do it, using any words or no words. We take the first step in the path of connection. Remember that picture I always talk about on the Sistine Chapel? Michelangelo's God and Adam? And God is reaching out and straining, and Adam is just like lying there and his finger's down. The connection is made when Adam lifts his finger. We lift our finger. We take the first step in making that connection. In his book, Space for God, Don Cosima writes of a conversation he had with the abbot of a monastery. He had just had this great retreat, 4 days. He explained to the abbot that he really wanted to keep up the prayer practice that he had learned there in this beautiful green monastery. The monks gathered 7 times a day for prayer. And he asked the abbot how out in the real world, with his demanding life, did he maintain his prayer practice as he had during the retreat. The abbot looked at him and said simply, first, you have to want to pray. Like, hello? First, you have to want to do it. The rule of St. Benedict on prayer, someone asked him, what is your rule on prayer when he was setting up the Benedictines? He said, if a man wants to pray, let him go and pray. It's kind of like the training you get if you want to be a writer. You know, you go to all these workshops and they look at you and say, sit down and write. Just sit down and write. Same thing. If you want to pray, just go do it. The desire to pray is the desire to return to that place of wholeness, to our center where we find peace. As Rumi wrote, the longing is the connection. The longing we feel is the energy of prayer, because we know we're going home. We're going back to that place that gives us peace. We're going back to our own center. So as we keep the discussion going this month, let's each of us reflect on our prayer practices. If you don't have one, think of starting one. It doesn't take much. Just find a quiet place, sit, breathe, and listen. And spend a few minutes doing it. If you don't hear anything in the first 30 seconds, just stay a few minutes longer. Sit, breathe, and listen. So I'd like to close with a quote from C.S. Lewis. He wrote, "I pray because I can't help myself. I pray because I'm helpless. I pray because the need flows out of me all the time, waking and sleeping. It doesn't change God, it changes me." My hope is that we continue to let our connection with Spirit, God, or Howard change us as well. Thank you.
Very good.